Good morning. It's out here about 2 o'clock, over 2 o'clock, on the day of December 12th. This is Apoli Jassy. I've been gone for a long time. I've been busy writing about the sad situation in our beloved country, Uganda. But I figured that I should do something today, that is, say something today. And that has to do with the plan by Museveni to run in the 2021 elections. I would ask that all Ugandans unite, write letters to the United Nations, write letters to African Union, informing them that Uganda is an occupied country by the Rwandese Tutsi refugees who usurped Uganda government, their host country's government. And as such, Museveni should not have qualified to be a leader of Uganda. And of course, we can see the results of that. Having somebody from another country who came to the country as a refugee, impostering as an indigenous Ugandan, sadly having taken advantage of the hospitality of indigenous Ugandan people and decided to slaughter our people for him and his clique of evil, genocidal, psychotic Rwandese Tutsi refugees to usurp Uganda government. It saddens me to know that many of these Rwandese that are in the government today are some of the people that might have been taught by my relatives that I saw come to our towns and villages in Toro, being helped by real people, not being treated like what happened in South Africa, where the people in South Africa, not one, not two, but many people I saw killing publicly, lynching publicly fellow Africans. And these are Africans whose governments helped black South Africans. I don't like gruesome pictures, gruesome photos, but this time I chose to actually keep those photos on my video gallery because it hurt so much to see how Africans could be so savage to their own fellow Africans, where they leave foreigners, Europeans, Indians, Chinese, to come in and exploit our resources, to come in and exploit our commerce. We see this in Uganda. What Museveni and his Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugee dictatorship has done to Uganda, intentionally impoverished the people of Uganda, so the Rwandese could have, the Rwandese can be able to rule without fear from capable indigenous Ugandans. So what did they do? They killed most of the prominent Ugandans in politics, in military, in education, in commerce, so that they could be the only big boys on the corner. So here we are now, 34 years. Museveni and his Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugees refused to leave power. And from what we know, they are arranging to start a fake guerrilla war in Uganda for the purpose of committing genocide and carrying out even larger social engineering than they were able to do during the Luwero and Acholi War. So they think because they have the control of the army. The control of the army and the guns cannot and will not oppress Ugandans forever. They've only managed to oppress us for lack of information. Many of our people did not know that our country had actually been hijacked, usurped. The government of Uganda had been usurped by Rwandese Tutsi refugees. Fortunately, through social media, through Radio Monansi, we've managed to inform our people. Now we can hear people even in South Africa singing, Rwandese must go away. Rwandese should go back to Rwanda. True indeed. There is no apologies for that statement. And indeed, even like in the old days, our ancestors used to banish even members of families, members of the tribes, to banish them if they did something evil, something unbecoming in the community. The Rwandese have done more than just something unbecoming in the community. The Rwandese have committed genocide of over 3 million indigenous Ugandans. The Rwandese have used and stolen our military hardware and finances to go fight and take over the government of Rwanda. They did the same thing in Congo. So we have many, many reasons why many Ugandans have a right to say Rwandese should be kicked out of Uganda. They came to Uganda as refugees. Now they rule Uganda. They kill Uganda whenever they want. They refuse to leave power. How bad can it get? How worse can somebody ever get? We should learn from the European example. When Hitler came and wanted to oppress Europeans, take over European countries, exactly almost what the Rwandese Tutsi are doing. Because the Rwandese Tutsis are filled with this idea like they're not black, some straight nose that few of them have, not even all of them, make them white. Brainwash, a throwback from the Belgians, telling them that they were not black because they had straight noses. If they were so different, they could not have managed to impose as the indigenous Ugandans. They could not have managed to disguise themselves. The only reason they could have been able to disguise themselves is because many of them do look like us. And unfortunately, that's how they've killed so many Ugandans, by having hidden among us and still hiding among us, having fake names, having fake indigenous Ugandan names. This is the question I ask myself. Why do they hide their identity? They hid their identity from the get-go because they knew they were going to do something evil on people of Uganda. The thing that hurts the most is for them to bring back the Indians and hand them 80%, as Museveni said, 80% of Ugandan commerce. That's the thing that hurts the most. I have felt even the Rwandese could have ruled Uganda if they were peaceful people. I wouldn't have minded that much. But the fact that they've come and abused the welcome, killed Ugandans, intentionally impoverished Uganda, brought in Somalis, brought in Ethiopians, brought in Eritreans and given them our commerce, brought in Indians, Chinese, all for the goal of them being selfish, even though our people fought to bring them to power. Our people fought to bring them to power. Many of our people died trying to bring change in our country, hoping that we'll end dictatorship. And these Rwandese evil, psychotic serial killers deceived Ugandan people that they were Banyankole, that they were so and so. Personally, I knew they were Rwandese. I knew Museveni was a Rwandese. But little did I think that Museveni could come in and do such evil things. I was thinking on a Pan-African level, which now I don't even want to use that word, Pan-African, because many of the people who claim to be Pan-African, they were actually killers. Yeah, many of the leaders. They were not sincere. They tried to overstay in power. If they were Pan-Africans, they should have been opening up other avenues for other people to come in, or groom some other leaders to come in and take over from them, caron from them, to build a better Africa. But they were thinking selfishly, stay in power. And that means overstaying in power means killing people, means undermining people. And I don't care even some people who say Nyerere was still a dictator. He overstayed. No. So this is the reason why I'm asking that all indigenous Ugandans unite and actually demand that Museveni does not stand in 2019 elections. I repeat, we all unite, organize, write letters to the UN, write letters to the African Union, and ask them not to allow Museveni to run elections, and ask them not to allow the military to interfere in the elections of our country. Because if we don't do this, Museveni wants to kill people. And in fact, I would appeal to Honorable Kyagulanyi Bobi Wine to take a very brave move by actually informing the world that our country has been occupied for the last 34 years by a Rwandese Tutsi refugee British neo-colonial puppet usurper dictatorship. In those exact words. I really believe that if the whole of Africa knew the truth, if the world, most regular citizens of different parts of the world knew the truth, that this is actually what had happened to Uganda, the Rwandese Tutsis would not be able to last even 6 months. We could do the same number on them like our people did on the British, did on the colonialists. When the time came to demand for our independence, we knew the British were not Ugandans. The British had come there, and no matter what they had owned, they still had to give it up. You can see in Zimbabwe, people say you got to give it up. You can see in South Africa, people are still saying the land got to be given to the black people. So I don't blame our people for not having brought out this case right away. I only blame Museveni, Besigye, Gishamuntu, Amama Mbabazi. Because these are the people who were together in the bush killing people in Luwero. When they came out, they had their plan for the 50-year master plan. And one of the things they set up was a dictatorship. A government that was going to eventually become a dictatorship. And then they did something very evilly smart. They killed and assassinated most of our prominent Ugandan intellectuals, business executives, politicians, military officers. So by having done that, they had practically sealed any chance of Ugandans having prominent indigenous Ugandan opposition politicians. That's what they had done. So they went on to control even the opposition politics. Besigye Rwandese Tutsi imposters as a Mukiga, Mbabazi Burundian Tutsi imposters as a Mukiga, Besigye Rwandese, Museveni as a Rwandese Tutsi imposters as a Munyankole. Mugisha Muntu is a very well-known fact. He's a Munyarwanda, but he does admit, he's the only one who actually admits that he's a Munyarwanda. Besigye doesn't, Mbabazi doesn't admit that he's a Murundi Tutsi. Museveni doesn't. This is very dangerous for Uganda. We cannot be deceived by these people's black faces. And I think that would be the worst form of racism or unrecognized racism, for us to have shouted white South Africans out, white South Africans out, white British out in Zimbabwe, but yet allow a Rwandese Tutsi refugee minority backed by Britain to commit genocide of over 3 million Ugandans. That's an abomination. And no Ugandan can rationalize that these guys are Ugandans, these guys have been here for a long time. No, as I said, even our ancestors used to banish their own family members if they did something very unbecoming in the community. Right here in America, they even disowned Snowden, a young man who exposed a lot of the American military secrets. They took away his passport. So here we are, indigenous Ugandans. We have been tortured, continue to be tortured by Rwandese Burundian Tutsi refugee. Museveni, then deceived by Rwandese Tutsi refugees, besije mugisha muntu ana imbabazi. Babazi ya Murundi, Tutsi. Come on, Ugandans, you can see that. Wake up. Wake up and smell the coffee. Wake up and realize that that's why we are suffering. That's why we've suffered so much. That's why Museveni has no feelings for Uganda. Evicts people from their houses, throws them out in the rain, evicts people from their land, brings in Indians. Right now he's going to take over the forest in Bunyoro, have an Indian farmer grow sugarcane. Sugar, even in America, many people are not taking sugar. Sugar is bad for our health. Here in America, I personally don't even drink sugar. There are other forms of sweeteners that I can use, or we can use, without having to use white sugar. So they're destroying our environment for something that doesn't have a future in true human understanding. Sugar doesn't have a future. Unless if it's used in some chemical production. But sugar as something to take in is not good for our health. Hence these Rwandese Tutsi refugee usurpers of our government are destroying our environment for something that is even dangerous for our health. My fellow indigenous Ugandans, this is the time to unite with everybody in Uganda, every member of the 15 nations of Uganda, excluding the Rwandese Tutsis who force themselves into our constitution, which is illegal, by the way. Even the United Nations rules say a refugee should never get involved in the host country's politics. African Union says all borders that were left by the colonies have to be respected. Whether we have people who look the same, sound the same on the borders, those who stayed on Uganda side, stay on Uganda side. Those who stayed in Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, stay on those side of borders. Museveni and the Rwandese Tutsi did a very illegal act by going ahead and changing our constitution to include the Rwandese in our constitution. The Rwandese are Rwandese. The Rwandese are not Ugandan. And even if they were single tribe from the border of Uganda, it's illegal for them to come from Rwanda and say they're going to make themselves citizens of Uganda. I've used this example with Baluya, who are on the border of Kenya and Uganda. And in Uganda, we got Basamia, the same people, the same language. Some of them have even relatives across the borders. But a Muluya could not come from Kenya and say that, okay, Baluya is going to become a tribe of Uganda when we already have the Baluya type, Baluya groups accounted for as Basami in Uganda. In Uganda, we have the Bafumbira already accounting for the Rwandese speakers. So I'm calling upon all indigenous Ugandans, even Honorable Kyagulanyi. I'm very glad that he was able to come out and tell us his wife is Rwandese, because some people thought they were just lying. But his wife is Rwandese. I have no problem with Kyagulanyi's wife being a Rwandese. All I ask is that his wife being Rwandese should not let him be easy on the issue of Rwandese takeover of Uganda government. Please, we have to deal with this issue. We have to explain to the world that our country is occupied by Rwandese serial killers. Rwandese Tutsi serial killers. Even if we have relatives who've been married to them, or even we as individuals who are married to them, they, our spouses, actually should be even more concerned and remorseful about what the kinsmen have done in Uganda. And I would hope, as I've seen, Mrs. Kyagulanyi seems to be that kind of person. And I would hope that as the future Ugandan First Lady, she should come out and make a statement without fear. Just like Honorable Kyagulanyi has come out and said he's not afraid, Mrs. Kyagulanyi should come out and, in fact, I would recommend that she addresses that issue of her being Rwandese and what she thinks about what the Rwandese Tutsi refugee dictatorship has done to Ugandans. It will help Uganda and many Ugandans who have been affected by the Rwandese Tutsis. The over 3 million Ugandans have been killed. The over 1.5 million Baganda and Ugandans were killed in Luwero. It will help bring about some form of reconciliation, some form of hope that our people in the future can get along. If we keep hiding the atrocities that the Rwandese have committed in Uganda, it's going to spell danger for the future of all of us. So we need to address the issue of Rwandese genocide against Ugandan people. We need to address the issue of Mugisha Muntu Besigye, Kagame, all these people that have killed Ugandans. We can't hide it. I really care for the health of our people. I really care about peace between our people. I have no hate for anybody. In fact, I wonder how the Rwandese could have done this to us. So it's with this understanding that I request that even Honorable Kyagulanyi, and he would be a very good candidate to really talk about their issue, not in sugarcoating terms, but in real terms of what the Rwandese have done, and explain it to the world, explain it to the African Union. Because I think this will even save Honorable Kyagulanyi's life, because Museveni thinks he can hide behind Banyankole, thinks he can hide behind being a Ugandan, well, actually he has not done anything for Ugandans and doesn't wish to even see Ugandans move ahead by him actually refusing to leave power. They still have a 250-year master plan. We have all kind of proof to prove that indeed the Rwandese Tutsi refugees took over the government of Uganda. Kagame was in Uganda, used Ugandan money, Rwejema were in Uganda. So all these are facts. We have the proof to prove that they even went and invaded Rwanda, that they even went and took over Rwanda, Congo. Unless we face this issue, there's going to be more genocide. I'm already hearing stories about genocide in Rwanda. I was sent a video of somebody cutting off somebody's head through the social media. Just like we saw yesterday, a woman's head cut off in Uganda or on Uganda. This is the signature of Museveni and his operatives trying to put fear in people. People's heads, we've already had people's heads being cut off. Just a few days ago in Uganda, it's the same thing. I got a video sent on my messenger about genocide in Congo. And actually, in this case, somebody was actually cutting the head off of somebody. It made me shrink. We don't want this in Uganda. It's because we don't want this in Uganda, we have to be sincere about who is committing atrocities in our country. We have to come out and address the issue of Rwandese question. The question is Rwandese. How should we deal with the question of Rwandese Tutsi refugees who continue to commit genocide in the Great Lakes region? I've come over and over. I've talked about how the European dealt with the issue of German warmongers. We have to deal with the issue of Rwandese Tutsi warmongers. Fellow indigenous Ugandan. I'll continue with this subject later. Thank you. Goodbye.